Welcome back to another episode of the Outcast Hunting Podcast. Before we get started, I think it would be good for us to go ahead and do our calls to action. So I've been noticing that on YouTube, most of everybody is watching us on YouTube. So if you will, subscribe, leave a comment, like this video, and remember that we are available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well, though.
Yep. We
have a special guest today. I'm really excited about this one. Many of you will be familiar with this person, but if you're not, you're in for a real treat. Mr. Walt Merrell. How are you today?
I'm good, but I doubt many of them are familiar with me. And given my chosen profession, if they are, they may not be people you want following the show very much, because I probably put them in prison a time or two.
So just in case they don't know, what is your chosen profession?
So I am the district attorney for the 22nd Judicial Circuit of the state of Alabama. I got elected in 2010. My first day in office was 2011. Obviously, before that, I was a practicing attorney, and it's interesting. I like so many lawyers, I went to law school so I could help people, and what I realized pretty quickly is that when I was a defense attorney, I could help one, and then the next one, and then the next one, and then at some point it dawned on me that as a prosecutor, I can help a whole lot more people, and so that's what I do. I try. My motto is, let's fix the problem. Sometimes the problem is this person needs to be in prison.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, I can fix that. We're going to put them in prison. But other times it's this person dropped out of high school and they need a better job, and so I make them go get a GED. Or sometimes it's addiction, or sometimes it's anger, or so. So you just got to kind of try to identify what the problem is, and then deal with that as best you can, and hope that the people haven't made the consequences so bad that they can't recover from them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And me and you actually go to the same church. So we know each other from there.
Yep, and I will say on your behalf that it is always an honor and a pleasure to serve with you. You are a man of many talents, and I doubt your viewership appreciates that as much as the people around you do.
Well, like I told you before we got started, I'm a jack of all trades, master of none.
Do you ever sing on camera?
I haven't sung on this camera yet.
I told him he should.
If we peer pressure you enough, will you pick up a guitar and play a song for us?
If only there was a guitar in this room. If only. Hey, it's cool, though. We were wanting to come up with like some intro music, and I had thought about getting, the guitar and recording something.
You should, yeah.
Anyway, it's... when it comes to the mastering and stuff, the instruments, I'm not really strong in that recording style. This is fairly easy, just podcast style. But anyway, I enjoy dabbling in little things like that.
Right.
So for those, and you can, I have some questions here,
absolutely.
But you jump in anytime.
Yeah, I got a few that I'd like to talk to him about, but go ahead with yours, and then because yours may...
And before I forget,
be the same as mine.
And before I forget, we appreciate you coming on, and I brought you an Outcast koozie and an Outcast mug, so that is yours right there.
I love coffee cups. I will treasure that. I promise you. Yes, that'll get many a mile of good use.
I hope you get some good use out of it. All right. So for those who may not know you yet, can you share a bit about your background and how you've grown to love the outdoors?
Yeah, so I grew up in Baldwin County, mostly in such a remote part of the county that, sometimes the nearest neighbor was 5 miles away. I share with people, and this is true, I say that, I have to sometimes qualify, this is true because I am a lawyer, and so people will doubt the veracity of a lawyer's statement sometimes. I was the first kid on the bus, and I got on the bus at 6:15 every morning, and I was the last kid off the bus, and I got off about 5 o'clock. And that's just to give you an indication of how far out in the boonies we lived. And so I spent a lot of time on the water, on Mobile Bay and in the Mobile River Delta, and I could just about, and I still do today, I still go back there all the time. But I've every kind of fish you can imagine, alligators, pigs, you name it, I've taken it and harvested it from those waters or from those lands. Now,
alligators?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I bet that was fun.
Oh,
I've
yeah,
always wanted to do that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We'll have to, so every year, I had an alligator tag this past year. We'll figure something out for next year.
Okay.
But I grew up alone, right? My parents both worked, and not to disparage them, but they worked more than a kid wanted his parents to work. And so, and given the fact that I got on the bus so early in the morning, I could go all week without seeing my parents, because most of the times I would go to sleep before they'd get home from work. So I say that to say I never had an outdoor mentor, right? My experience with the outdoors as a kid was whatever I could figure out on my own. And we had this little beat-up boat that some days would run and some days wouldn't. And if I could get it in the water and go, I would. And other days I might just fish from the shore. But so I never had a father figure, right, in the outdoors until I got married. And my father-in-law, George Gant, who was one of the finest men I've ever known, he had a few rules about his household, and one of them was you didn't hunt on his land unless you were in the family. And so it didn't matter how many times I had come to visit, and didn't matter how much I professed my love for his daughter, I wasn't hunting until we got married. I don't know still to this day if that wasn't his little ploy to make sure, you know.
Yeah.
But but through the years, he took me under his wing. I until I was 19 or 20, somewhere right in there, I'd only been deer hunting a handful of times in my life, because that was, deer hunting requires a whole lot more skill than a lot of other, and knowledge than a lot of other types of hunting. And so as kids, we might load up 410s and go shoot squirrels, but we were just dumb kids, we didn't know what we were doing. And so he taught me at 19 or 20 how to deer hunt, because I'd probably only been 4 or 5 times in my life. And those few times that I had been were with other friends whose dads had taught them to hunt, right? And so that left just kind of this appreciation for what he had given to me. That was a great gift. I don't, other than my salvation, that may be the greatest gift anybody's ever given me, was just that knowledge and that experience. And so I just developed from that this real desire, this passion to share that with other people, and to encourage other people to experience the same things. Now, the story gets much more complicated than that, and y'all both know that. And so in as succinct a fashion as I can tell it, what I'll share with the audience is that in 2015, I was diagnosed with cancer. And unfortunately, I was told it was a terminal form of orbital sarcoma, which is essentially I had a tumor in my eye and in my eye socket. And
that was one of my questions.
And so
I read up on that, and I didn't know that about you, and I don't know if a lot of people do, but that was my question. I called Taylor the other day, and we was talking. I told Taylor, we'll have a few questions to ask, and I told Taylor, I said, well, I read up a little bit on Walt, and I found that out about you, and that was a cool little fact. And then I read a little bit of the story, but that was my question. I wanted you to tell that story of what all took place. So
the doctor told me, he said, look, you got about 2 years to live. And it was an untreatable, incurable sarcoma. And I had 3 little girls. And so I was, in this place where I was certainly not ready to go home. And there was a lot of unfinished business. And I was sitting on my back porch one day. I also had my oldest daughter was just reaching the age where, and y'all will get there, where little girls, they start turning from little girls into young ladies. And when they go through that stage, they can be a little bit difficult, right? And she was kind of going through that. She was just entering the beginning phases of it. And I was sitting on my back porch one day, and I said, God, I just need a way to have this time with my girls, and I need it where I can have some influence in their life and where we can bond. And I jokingly tell people now I wanted to play with G.I. Joes and they wanted to play with Barbies, and G.I. Joe always shot Barbie. And so we were kind of at an impasse. And as I looked out over my backyard and contemplated all the things that were going on in my life, I realized I got all this. And so within a week or two, I'd taken my daughter camping for the very first time. We had been hunting a few times before, well, not more than a few. I'd taken them hunting a bunch, but it took on a whole new meaning and added a whole different element. Now, obviously, I'm still here, and so what I'll share, just to kind of finish the story, is I had a couple of different surgeries and a biopsy along the way and a whole lot of treatment, and finally a doctor at Emory University in Atlanta, who was only one of 4 in the world with his skill set, said, I think the best thing to do is to go in there and cut it all out. And I said, you know what I got to lose? So the next day he operated and removed the entire tumor, and it's been to 7 different pathology labs since then, and nobody can figure out what it is. And so every year I go get an MRI and make sure that the remnant that's there is not growing. But I tell folks all the time I'm too embarrassed maybe or unworthy to think that God worked a miracle in my life, but I'm too grateful not to give him the credit for it.
Absolutely, that's all it is.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a long answer, but that kind of gives you the background of where I came from and what my experience was coming up to what transformed kind of how I look at the outdoors.
And you mentioned a little bit about this, but you said you were sitting in your backyard, kind of contemplating. I guess your thoughts at that point in time was kind of like, well, what can I do to make the best of my time in these 2 years that I've been given? Hopefully 2 years at that point in time. And you wrote a book, or decided, I guess, in that time to write a book.
Yeah, so I really decided, it started out with a camcorder. Like the very first thing I ever, because you remember my mindset was I have this limited amount of time now. So I would spend as much time during the day as I could with the girls when they were not in school. My youngest was still, I think she was at Little Friends maybe, but and then at night I would sit down in front of that camcorder and video stuff that I just wanted them to know. And so the first thing that I ever recorded, because I felt kind of stupid doing it, and so I sat down and made some notes, and it was, if a guy does any of these 10 things, do not marry him. And they were not obvious things like smoke crack. These were subtle things, that I thought were important for me. So I started filming all these things. And then at some point, I got to confess, it became, I don't want my girls to forget me.
Yeah.
And so I quit videoing because I think I ran out of videotapes and it was getting expensive, and I had a box full of them, and so I started writing stuff down.
Right.
And so for the next year or more, I would write for 2 or 3 hours a day, and that eventually turned into a book.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess in that time you was kind of thinking, you wanted to give them some advice when that time comes, if you're not here, that they could read about Dad and his advice on what Dad thinks, should hopefully help them through their life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, and look, from a professional standpoint, I'll tell you that I don't know that there's any more powerful tool than a 2-parent family. And notice what I said there. I said 2-parent family. Look, divorce is what divorce is. But getting divorced does not mean that you still can't have a 2-parent family. And so I just knew from my profession, I see what happens when a dad is absent from the home.
Right.
And so it was just that important to me for those girls, for me to be able to pour into them, even if I wasn't still around,
Right.
And so years later, I got thousands and thousands of pages of stuff that I've written down, and I literally was sitting there one day. They're all in these little notebooks, right? And I was sitting there one day, and I was thinking, what am I going to do with this? And I had this conversation with myself where I talked about burning it, throwing it in the trash, sticking it in the attic. Like, why am I saving this box of stuff?
Right.
And so I prayed through it for a couple of weeks, and finally I just felt led to put it on Facebook. And I put the first thing on Facebook, and people responded to it. And so I'm sure kind of like you guys, you don't really know what you're doing, and you just stick your toe in the water and hope you don't drown trying it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So give us an example of one of the stories that was in.
Yeah, so I'm really intentional now. Even I'll pull out those old stories, and I may have written it back then for a different reason, but I'll take what I wrote, and I'm intentional now to show how I think that God works in all of our lives in these really unique ways, you know. And sometimes it's funny, and sometimes it's heartbreaking, and sometimes it's something else. But you know, a hunting story I wanted to share with y'all was my oldest daughter, Bay. She and I were hunting, and a pretty good buck walked out. You know, not a you know, anything that you're gonna, you know, write home to mama about, but a good buck that you'll eat, and you might put a European mount on him or something, you know. Right. And so she shoots him and gut shots him, and I knew immediately she had gut shot him because he, of course, y'all have seen it before. He drops his back hind legs and his butt hits the ground, and he scoots for just a little bit, and then he jumps up and runs off. And so it gave me a good opportunity to show her kind of, we had never experienced that before. So we went and we found some of his guts, for lack of a better term, and I showed her what all that looked like. And so then we started tracking him. Well, it didn't take long to lose the track because, you know, they don't bleed much.
That's right.
And so she said, well, let's go home. I was like, no, baby, this is something, we had this opportunity. And we didn't capitalize on it.
You got to follow through.
Yeah, but now we got to follow through. Even if it gets hard, we're not going to stop.
Right.
And she said, well, Daddy, my toe's really hurting. And I was like, what? And she said, my toe's hurting. And she goes through this. I stubbed my toe on the couch the other day. And of course, I don't know if every day is like this, but I was like, whatever. You're just making this up because you don't want to walk. So we walked for hours, and we just started a circle pattern. Yeah. And we never found that deer. In fact, 2 weeks later, I got him on camera, and so he lived, which I was surprised, or at least he lived for 2 weeks. And she and every, you know, seemed like every 20 steps, my toes hurting. I'm like, and finally I was like, hey, look, I don't want to hear none of that. We are going to follow through to the end. We're going to see this thing through. And I will admit, she was a trooper. Now, she walked with me every step of the way, but about 10 o'clock that night, okay, that's how long we walked for. We called it a night. I finally gave up, and we went to the house, and it was cold. It was one of those cold nights, too. And so I remember sitting on the couch shivering, and my wife's come over, and she's kind of fussing at me because I've kept her out so late and how cold. She's got her hands on her cheeks, you know, and poor baby this. And she brings us each a bowl of soup, and Bay's over there taking off her shoes. They're taking off her boots, and she pulls that boot off, and y'all, her toe is as black as my watch.
Good gracious.
And so her mama gave me a good tongue lashing too. And so I took that story, though, and I wrote about it. And I talked about how, as a parent, sometimes we make these judgment calls, right? And I just made a judgment call. And could I have said, well, take your boot off and let me look at it? I could have, but I didn't. And you know what? God taught me a lot that night about how I need to be paying more attention as a parent, because sometimes the little details are what's really important. And I miss some little details. And a lot of what I write about now is not, I'm real careful to say, look, I'm not a good hunter. I'm not a good dad. I can tell you a lot of things I'm not good about. And that's mostly what I write about, right? You won't hear me writing stories about the massive bucks that I killed. I've killed some good bucks. Yeah. But you will hear me writing stories about how I messed something up. Yeah. And how I learned from it, you know, because I do think that's probably where more value in storytelling is.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I agree.
So you take these stories that you have written down, and you said you put it on Facebook. Was that just one of the stories that you put on Facebook?
Yeah, I just put one. That was me sticking my finger in the water.
Got you. Yeah. So what happened from there? You saw there must have been a good response on that story.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was, I don't even remember now, but it was encouraging enough that I did it again and again and again. And slowly but surely it built up. And then, so that was in 2017. And then in 2020, we had this kind of perfect storm of events. One was COVID happened, right? So everybody goes home. And the governor closed all the state offices for 2 weeks. And now I will tell y'all, and Governor, you'll just have to forgive me. I just couldn't in good conscience close our office.
Yeah.
And so I made the taxpayers pay us to do a job, so we all went to work every day. The courthouse was closed, and so we pulled up the carpet, and we put down new carpet, and we pulled out the cabinets, and we put in new cabinets, and we painted, and we completely remodeled our offices on our own. But everybody else is at home doing nothing or doing whatever, right?
Right.
And my mother-in-law made a pan of biscuits, and for the viewers that don't know, my mother-in-law is Brenda Gant.
I was about to say, I don't know if anybody knows her, but
listen, I did not realize how well known she was until like sometime after the takeoff.
Yeah.
Somebody said that she was on the Kelly Clarkson show. I thought, what?
I didn't know anything about Miss Brenda until my grandmother, who's 83 years old, come in and said, oh, Melissa, that's my mom's name. Oh, Melissa, I found this lady that I love to watch on Facebook. Now, my grandmother knows nothing about Facebook.
Right.
And we have to monitor what she does because she will, my grandmother is she's something else. But she come in and, Melissa, I found somebody that I really like to watch. So Miss Brenda Gant is like the top of the list on my grandmother's Facebook. Yeah. So everything that she posts, my grandmother wants to know the recipe. She wants to know what she's doing. She loves to sit back. She'll sit back there for hours and watch Brenda Gant videos. And that's the first time I ever heard about Brenda Gant. And then I started looking into her, and I thought, well, good gracious. She's a big deal.
Yeah, she is a big deal.
Yeah.
And I have to say, she taught me how to make biscuits.
There you go.
And they're pretty good too, aren't they?
They were good.
Right. Absolutely.
So she posts this video of her making biscuits. She literally films it with her camera in her hand or the phone in her hand, and she makes the biscuits with one hand. And it's about a 4 or 5 minute video. And she had a little Facebook page where it was just her and her girlfriends, and they would she had never even uploaded a video to Facebook, so I uploaded it to her Facebook page for her, and within less than a week she had 1 million views.
That is crazy.
Really?
And so we set up her own Facebook page, for cooking with Brenda Gant, and now she's got 4 million followers, and so what happened was I had about 20,000 people following Shepherding Outdoors, and of course a rising tide raises all ships, right? So her rocket launches, and I just happen to be fortunate enough to get drug along part of the way with her. And so now I do have a pretty good social media following, and I call them friends, not fans, because fans is just a word I don't like very much. It makes me uncomfortable. But and I just finished my 4th book and got the publisher saying, when's the next one going to be ready? So,
really? Great. Now, I know that you did Shepherding Outdoors. Was that your first book?
That was.
And then you had volume 2?
That's right. That was my fit of creative genius. Somebody said, what are we going to name the second one? I said, how about volume 2?
Put a lot of thought into that one.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. And then Dog Days.
Yeah.
Is that the one? That's the third.
Yeah, that's
right?
the third one.
Okay. Yeah. And you're working on a 4th, or you have another one?
No, it's done. It's fixing to be coming out in the next couple of weeks. It's called Fourth Night's Watch. It was the 4th watch of the night when Jesus walked on water and called Peter out of the boat, and I just use that as an encouragement, because I think that where parents fail more than anything is by refusing to get out of the boat.
Right.
I don't know how to do that, so I'm not going to try to do that with my kid. I've never been hunting, so I'm not going to try to take my son hunting, right? And so that's refusing to get out of the boat. And I remember, guys, the first time I ever took any of my girls camping, my dad had never taken me camping, right? I didn't know how to camp. I didn't know how to set up a tent. I didn't know how to do any of that. And I remember the intense feeling of pressure I had about, this has got to be perfect. I got to meet, Bear Grylls standards and all of these famous experts, and I got to somehow manage to conjure up that imagery. And I struggled for 30 minutes to get that tent set up. And I remember at the end of setting the tent up, she was sitting on a log like this the whole time, just watching me. And I remember thinking, just feeling this utter dejection, like I have already failed because I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm an idiot. And I should just pack all this up and we should just go to the house and be done with this. And with her hands on her head on her knees, she said, "I'm really proud of you, Dad." And it just melted me. And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she said, "You know how to set up a tent." And in that moment, I realized that our kids don't care if we're experts.
Right.
They just care if we'll engage.
Right.
And so I try, as the title suggests, I just try to encourage people, hey, man, just engage with your kids. Get out of the boat of your own comfort and walk on the water. And if you sink, that's okay.
Right.
Just try it and see what happens. And so I tell people all the time, if you've never been hunting, that's okay. Like, I promise you, somebody in your family owns a deer gun, right? Or somebody owns a shotgun you can go dove hunting with. Yep. And somebody's got some clothes you can borrow, and there's public lands, and there's somebody who will tell you enough that you can get through it. And honestly, all those hunts that we did when I was kids, the pig hunting, the squirrel hunting, all that stuff in the Delta, I didn't know what I was doing. That was somebody else who was willing to just show me a little bit.
Right. And that's kind of, we got to talking a little bit before the podcast started about Outcast. And that's, and we kind of gave you a short answer on that. But our main goal was to start Outcast, give people in the South a voice on hunting, but at the same time also promote conservation. And like you said, and we say it a lot on our podcast, like if you mainly we're bow hunters and we love to bow hunt, and we talk all the time about if you don't know how to bow hunt, that's not a big deal. It don't cost a lot. You don't have, I think sometimes the hunting industry will put I don't know the right words for it, but they set the standards.
They're really good at marketing.
High.
They make you think that you have to have this fancy equipment.
Yes. Right. You have to have the nicest bow, or you have to have the nicest camouflage, or you're looked down on, or whatever. And that's not the case. The biggest thing is get out there and try it.
Yep.
And as you grow, you'll grow with hunting and stuff like that. But the biggest thing is get out there and do it. Yep. Have a good time in the outdoors, God's creation. And just enjoy it. You don't have to kill them. We're big on you don't have to kill the biggest buck. I like to kill. I'm a trophy hunter more than anything, and that could be a fault of my own. But we also promote it don't have to be.
His daddy helps him though.
Yeah. And it's
I was
easy.
trying not to get him in this podcast.
It's easy to say you're a trophy hunter when you kill 4 points.
That's right. That's right. To each his own. A trophy's a trophy. No.
I had to do that for Tim.
Yeah,
he was probably looking at the camera going, "What?
Don't act like you know what you're doing."
I'm joking. I'm joking.
I was blessed to have a dad that showed me a lot about hunting coming up from a very young age. He loved hunting. Now he's kind of gotten in his older age. He loves to see us boys do it more than he cares anything about it. He'll plant the food plots rather than go out there and hunt. He'll plant them for us and tell us to get after it. But we were blessed to have a dad that did that. But our biggest thing is we want to promote that it don't have to be the biggest buck. It don't have to be, if you like to we just want people to get out there in the outdoors, enjoy the outdoors, learn about it. And it may not just be deer hunting. It may be squirrel hunting, hog hunting. But our biggest thing is get outdoors. Yep. Go try it. Try something new, even though you may not know what in the world you're doing. Who cares? Go do it.
And you mentioned that there's public land, but I would say in the area that we're in South Alabama, we have that southern hospitality. I would be willing to bet if you really wanted to get in the outdoors and you needed someone to help you introduce you to it, I would be willing to bet there's people that would let you go on their private land.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And they would love to help you.
And that is really one of the purest forms of enjoyment of hunting is doing it with other people. Right? That's why, for example, dog hunting, some people love it, some people hate it. I'm not a dog hunter. I have deer tracking dogs, but not deer hunting dogs. And But that's part of the enjoyment of dog hunting, is that it's the camaraderie of it all.
Right.
It's the grandfather, the father, and the son all loading up in the truck and trying to get in front of the deer and get out and get set up.
Right.
And so that's one of the things about why I like what you guys do that I think that is oftentimes overlooked. And I know I'm gonna make some people mad when I say this, but look, I'm a district attorney. I don't really care if people get mad at me or
Sometimes
not.
Sometimes your job is making people
That's
mad.
right.
I'm in favor of crossbows, so it's okay.
I firmly
don't say that again.
I firmly believe that the most authentic form of hunting occurs in the South. And that is because traditionally, I'm not saying exclusively, but traditionally, look, I've been out west and hunted, right? But those hunts don't involve the same kind of camaraderie. And what we do down here is we scrape together what we can, and we figure out how to make it work. Most of the time, we're hunting either for the fun of it or for the sustenance of it, right? I'm a meat hunter.
Yep.
We got to kill 3 deer a year and put them in the freezer, or somebody's going to be hungry at some point.
That's right.
And also, we teach values in Southern hunting. What we kill, and we don't kill a mockingbird, right? It's a sin to kill a mockingbird, to quote Harper Lee. So, I think the purest form of true hunting exists here in the South, and I'm glad you guys are highlighting it, because I think that's something. I think people get caught up in a 4x4 elk or a 6x6 elk,
right?
And it's one guy and his paid guide, and when it's over with, they text each other a few times and that's it, right? Mm-hmm. But the three of us can go a half mile down the road to my place, get a quail dog out, and go quail hunting all afternoon, and might not flush but one covey, and might shoot 2 birds between the three of us. But we'll talk about the memories we made for the
rest of your
years.
life. That's right, absolutely.
Yeah. And that is something, when you post on social media, that is something that you can't share with people.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's one of my gripes about social media. I know that we post on social media, with the podcast and stuff, but it's easy to look through social media and see that 4x4 elk, I think you said, and see the trophies, and
right.
Mm-hmm.
And while that is fun, that's what we all kind of long for at times. That's not what it's all about.
That's right. Yeah, I tell my girls there's 2 kinds of fun in the world. One kind is the fun that's immediately fun. It's the instant gratification. It's the joke with the funny punchline, right? But usually at some point you forget that fun. You forget what it was in the moment. You don't remember the punchline to the joke, or you absent seeing the picture of the elk, you don't really think about it because it's not a lasting kind of permanent fun. And the other kind of fun is memories.
Yep.
Right, and that's really why, to your point, Taylor, that's why I write, because you can convey that through the written word, right? And so I hope when people read my stories, honestly, one of the things I hope is that some dad is encouraged enough to say, well, you know what, I am going to take my daughter hunting. Mm-hmm. And then number 2, I hope that they understand that it's not about the kill, it's about the experience.
Absolutely.
When it comes to your kids, they don't care if you kill something or not.
Yep.
They are having their daddy took them hunting.
Yep.
That's what matters.
I've never written a book, maybe one day, but neither that I know of, but but that's,
I can't even read.
The reason you write and the reason we did the reason we did this podcast is for pretty much the same reasons, is to be able to tell our stories and share with the public that may not be able to experience those stories. Hopefully they get a little joy out of hearing us, the funny stories that we have to tell. But I'll be honest with you, I 100% agree with what we've been talking about, because like I said, I've hunted since I was a little boy, but my dad's always been a big duck hunter. And we went out to Arkansas, Mississippi from when I was, waist high. My little brother come along, he joined us. But some of my most memorable hunts was hunts that we did not kill anything on. They were fun. We laughed and joked. We got mad because we wasn't killing anything. But it was the funniest, most memorable things, and we still talk about them hunts to this day. Like, you remember that time, and that's what it's all about. When you really sit down and you think about it, it's like being with my brother and my dad, my friends. That's really what it was all about, and that's the trophy in the long run.
That's right.
Because something hanging on your wall, I watched something the other day, a guy kind of put everything in perspective. I think he was, it was a short on social media, but he said, when you're on when you're on your deathbed, which kind of goes back to your story about the news that you had gotten, and he said, when you're on your deathbed, you could be the most successful person in the world, but he said, he was a pastor, and he said, I've never been to a deathbed where they said, bring me my trophies, I want to see it one more time.
Yep.
They all want their loved ones around and the memories they made with them to tell them that they love them before they go out. The trophies no longer mean anything. So really and truly, what means everything is being with your friends, the people you enjoy and you love, and that's what it's all about.
That's right.
I love your view on using the outdoors as a opportunity to bond with your kids. And it reminds me, last year I took Dawson on his first deer hunt, and I took video cameras and we recorded the whole day. I set up the tripod where we ate snacks on the tailgate of the truck. That's what it was all about for him, by the way, was the snacks.
Yeah.
And hey, you know what? Souse meat and a little Tabasco sauce and some hoop cheese, and he'll remember that forever.
Absolutely.
And that's what I wanted. I told my wife when we left, like, we may not see a thing. And we actually did get lucky that night, though, and we killed a doe that, we could.
Hopefully it was during the day, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Well, yes. It was during the evening time, but by the time we got home, it was.
You have the right to remain silent.
We forgot. We can't tell them all the stories.
That's right.
That big buck I killed last year at night. No, I'm just playing, man.
That is one thing. Well, that's neither here nor there, but.
Yeah, finish telling us about Dawson's first one.
He, there was, at one point, we were in the shooting house, and I thought, there is no way we were seeing a thing, because he is sitting in that chair. His legs are just swinging on the chair. He has his veggie straws, and he's just going. And I thought, we are not seeing a deer. But I was just watching him. He was having a good time.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. It was awesome. And what was great is I recorded it, like I said, and I watched it. I uploaded it to our private YouTube account where we have little family videos where just me and my wife can go watch. And I saw it. And I watched it. I thought, that was an awesome day.
Yeah.
There was even a time where he spilled chocolate milk on himself.
Right.
Because I hit the brakes to make it slosh on him. Anyway, it was fun. But
it really is just about the experience. And I try to encourage dads. Again, don't look to me. I mean, do I wear scent lock clothing? Sure, yeah. Do I try to do the right things? I do. But do I get caught up in it? No. Right. And I'm not going to let the rules of the hunt mess up my kid having a good time.
Right.
So, like, to your point, my middle daughter, Kate, she's a freshman at Mississippi State now, but when she was about 8 years old, we were hunting in Pickens County, and y'all both had this experience. Before we leave, and this is before dawn, I'm like, go in there and use the bathroom. I did, Daddy. You sure you don't need? I'm good, Daddy. About the third time you bring up, they're like, "You shut up, Daddy." And so we go. It's about a half a mile hike in. We get into the shooting house and we get good and situated. And the sun comes up and there's 5 or 6 does out there in the field, and there's a little 4-point. And I'm thinking, weather's perfect. I'm thinking, man, we're gonna have a good hunt. And she is over there in her seat, and she's like this. And I'm like, finally, I said, what are you doing? She said, I got a TT, Daddy. And I said, oh, man. So I said, can you hold it? She said, I think so. So about 20 seconds later, she's like, I can't hold it anymore. Well, we're in a hardwood bottom. So she gets out of the shooting house, and it sounds like a Tyrannosaurus Rex walking on them dried oak leaves.
Oh, yeah.
And on top of that, she's got on a one-piece camouflage coverall. And so she gets I look out the back window, she's back there completely naked in the woods. And y'all, I bet she peed 3 gallons.
Oh my gosh.
And so she finally gets dressed. Now this is an ordeal, right? I mean, everything in the woods knows we're there at that point. And and she climbs back up, and she said, "You think anything hurt us?" And I looked at her and said, I don't think so, baby. It'll be all right. Mm-hmm. And I just leaned back in my chair and got real comfortable, and she's sitting over there next to me, and I mean, I bet it wasn't 10 minutes later, a fine 8-point walks out, and she smokes him.
Wow. Really?
So, you know, I try to tell people,
I told you, Taylor.
What?
You got to pee at the bottom of your stomach.
You know, look, I know that stuff's important, but you can't make it so miserable for the kids that they don't ever want to come back, right? If they got to pee, let them pee. If they get hungry, if they spill chocolate milk, whatever, right? Just let them have a good time so that they want to come back, right? Because if they don't come back, they won't ever kill a deer.
Yep, absolutely. Right. And I think that's your biggest thing with your little boy is you want him to hopefully one day grow up and mature in hunting like you have and all of us have. But at first, you want to make it fun for them, whether you see a deer, whether you don't. You just want it to be a good memory for them and to look back on.
Dawson, I recently got him a bow, a small little bow, and he is barely able to pull it back and shoot it. But I think you probably saw the video.
I get videos all the time of him shooting it, which brings a smile to my face because he's hilarious when he shoots.
Like you said, like you guys have said, I wanted him to have a positive experience with it, something that was fun. So I started tying balloons to the target. Let's pop these balloons. And anyway, I have to help him hold it. And I don't know if you saw the most recent video, but his form is not that bad.
No, it's not.
I was guiding his elbow back. And anyway, my wife was recording it. And he loves it.
Oh, yeah.
I think the last time he started doing, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He started dancing. Yeah. He has a good time.
So it's awesome. Just let him have a positive experience.
That's right. My wife gets so aggravated when we'll be at the house, and I have a little girl. She's only 11 months old. She, of course, can't get real active with me right now, but my wife will get aggravated. I'll say, she's going to be the biggest deer hunter this side of whatever, or just kind of trying to agitate my wife a little bit. She's like, she's gonna go. I said, she's gonna be a daddy's girl. I said, you can go ahead and you can get that through. And she ain't gonna be no bow hunter. She ain't gonna be bow hunting with you. I said, I promise she's going to.
Hey, that's when you need to go buy that pink camouflage.
That's right. That's right.
And when she comes home, just have her dressed in it.
The other day, I didn't tell my wife, but I took her to daycare, and my mom, big duck hunter. So my mom, when she was born, my mom got this 6 to 12-month-old little suit, and it's got mallard ducks all over it. Well, it's boyish, a little bit, but it has little ruffles at the top, so you can tell that it's a girl.
Hey, you put
outfit.
A pink bow in her hair, she's fine.
That's what right. I did. I put a green bow in her hair to match the mallards on that thing, and I took her. It was a Friday morning. I was off. My wife wasn't. She was at work, and when she got off that afternoon, she had to pick the little girl up, and I said, or Danny, that's her name. I said she had to pick Danny up, so I did it on purpose and didn't tell her what I dressed her in. When she got home, she said, "What is this? I told you I didn't want her to ever wear this. She looks like a little boy." I said, "I did it just to get on your nerves." The ladies at daycare just loved it, but yeah, it was fun. But I can't wait though until she gets a little. I don't want to hurry it up, but like your daughters, I'm ready to get to the point to where she can understand and remember some things with Daddy, and go and do some things.
Yeah, I am curious. You might have said it and I just missed it, but about how old were they when you started introducing them?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked because I learned from experience. And what I would tell you both and what I tell a lot of young dads is they're ready way before you think they are. And so with Bay, my oldest, I waited till she was probably 6 or 7, maybe even 8. I might have taken her hunting a time or two when she was 6. We really started working on it when she was 7, and then when she was 8, we were hunting a lot. But I waited too long, and I realized that. So with Kate, I had her in the shooting house with me at 5 or 6, and in fact, a great story with Kate. And look, at 5. You should expect to have a good hunt for about 20 minutes, right? But be okay with whatever happens.
That's right.
So after we're sitting in a tree stand, and it was a beautiful day. A good cold front, high pressure had pushed through, and the wind was just right, and it was cold outside, and I knew the sun shining, they were going to be moving, and she made it about 20 minutes before she got bored, and I could tell she's fidgeting, she's picking up stuff on the floor, and she whatever, and so I just handed her a little call, and I said, "Start blowing on this." And she said, what is it? And I said, it's a predator call. And I said, if there's a bobcat or a coyote, and she's blowing on it like Hank Williams Jr. blowing on a harmonica, you know. and after 30 seconds, I thought, well, this is the worst idea ever. And so I literally have lost just all interest in what's going on. And I'm just looking at the floor. There was actually, you know how when it's real cold and you got wasps in your shooting house, and so he was trying to find him a sunny spot, but he's too cold to fly. So I was watching this wasp walk around on the floor, and she starts hitting my leg, and she says, Daddy, what's that? And I look up, and there's this monster bobcat running straight at us.
Really?
And so she has called up a bobcat. So
wow.
So I smoked him for her. We mounted that, and she was too young to shoot, you know.
Right.
And then with Banks, with my youngest daughter, I mean, at 4, I had her in the shooting house with me.
Yeah.
And so I just don't think when they are ready, like if they can play Pee Wee sports, if they're doing kindergarten on their, you know, preschool on their own, they're ready.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's good for both of y'all to, you know, usually my experience is the moms or the dads don't think they're ready when they are.
They go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we're to a point where we a good wrapping up point. But before we do wrap up, though, your books, is there a place where people could go and buy those if they're interested?
You can just go to my website, shepherdingoutdoors.com, and I do publish stories there too that people can read. They can also order my books there, and of course I'm on Facebook on Shepherding Outdoors and YouTube and Instagram, and we do a lot more than just hunt, but it is mostly outdoor. I mean, we kayak and we camp and we fish, and you know, and sometimes we just get out and walk around in the woods. One of my favorite things to do is in the wintertime is to go walk the creeks, and you know, you don't have to worry about the Mohicans as much. And, you still got to worry about them a little bit. Hey, my wife almost got bit by a rattlesnake today.
Really?
She was out in the yard working, and she said she's digging a hole to plant an azalea, and she said I had already dug my hole and had my dirt piled up. And she reached and picked up the azalea, and, you know, you got to pull it out of the pot and then kind of break up the root system. And she said, I was going to put it down, and he started rattling, and he is right there at the edge of the hole. And I said, Hannah, how did you not see him? And she said, I have no idea. But anyway, we can add that to the list of the things my wife has hunted and killed. We have one less rattlesnake now. But anyway, yeah, so shepherding.
I don't do snakes. I do not do snakes. So I would have flipped out if that would have been me.
Right. Shepherdingoutdoors.com. That's where they can go.
Good. And your fourth book, is it available for pre-order right now? Did I see where that's?
Yeah, it's actually you can order. You can go to that same website and order it there.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us today.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate y'all and what you're doing. Keep up the good work.
We'll have to have you on again sometime. I think we say that to everybody that comes on, but we mean it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for watching this episode. If you haven't already, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and share this podcast with a buddy, and we'll catch you on the next one. See y'all.